So,
Yes,
um,
I'm still
what I'll
here.
do is I'll do the intro. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just right. I think I'll start that again. Sorry. We'll get this going again. Uh, right. I'll have to do a bit of editing at the end of the thing, and I'll sort it out. So I'm gonna do it all over again, basically. So here we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sky Blue History Podcast. With me, Claudia Cardellino, and of course, the man without whom much of Coventry City's past might have been lost to time, our club historian and walking encyclopedia of all things Sky Blue, Jim Brown. Tonight, we've got something very special indeed. We're joined by a true Coventry City legend. For some, he's the most entertaining player ever to wear the Sky Blue. For many who saw him play, he'd walk into their all-time starting 11. And for others still, he was simply the best footballer ever to pull on the shirt. He was a winger with flair, energy, and magic in his boots, a player's fans still talk about with wide smiles and misty eyes. And for me personally, it's extra special honour because I had the privilege of seeing him play in what may have been my first ever match, a friendly at Blackpool in 1970. That day sticks in my memory, not just because of Tommy, but also because I saw John Craven and Neil Ramsbottom, who also went on to join the Sky Blues later on. So it's with genuine excitement and gratitude that we say, hello, Tommy Hutchison. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So
Welcome, Tommy.
we got,
Eventually.
we got there in the end. Now, before we dive into your incredible career at Coventry City, I've got one question to ask. I wanted to ask you about someone I've always been curious about, a name I've read a lot about growing up but never saw much of on the pitch, a fellow Scot uh, as yourself. He was once tipped as a big star of the future, but sadly, a knee injury at the age of 25 cut short his career far too soon. Tommy, what were your memories of Tony Green? Because everything I read about him said he was such a special player.
Yeah, well, I was in digs with Tony when I first came down from Scotland, and it was quite strange really because I was in digs with him and Henry Mowbray, another Scots lad. So the three of us were in there. So nobody in the rest of the lads in the digs hadn't a clue what we were talking about. So that always helped. And no, Tony, strangely enough, had been on trial at Blackburn roughly, I think it was about 6 months before me. We'd both been to Blackburn on trial and both got rejected. And within 6 months of us going down to Blackpool, we both played in the first team at Ewood Park against them. So it was a good run. But Tony, for me, I can remember being asked this with a magazine or something like that, is who's the best and the best player that you've seen or played since you've come to, and my name was Tony Green's is the name that, other than maybe scoring goals, Tony had everything. He can go past people for fun, he can pass it, he can run. And the only thing was he had bad ankles at first, and 9 times out of 10 he'd be on the treatment table during the week. But come a Saturday, it was as if maybe we should all try that. But because he would always turn it on, and I could remember there was a game that the television picked up. We played Aston Villa at Bloomfield Road, and they did a programme on him. And honestly, it was unbelievable to see somebody with the ability and skill that he actually had. But again, he had a bad injury when he was with us. He tore his Achilles. And I could remember the problem we had with it. It's such a delicate area to heal because there's very little blood flow to it, so it finds it. And he went for months with it. And I could remember him coming back from the specialist, and the specialist had said to him, "Best thing you can do is go and find a plough field and run in it." And what he was actually saying is you'd have been better if you'd have snapped it rather than,
Right.
just strained it. And we were in a training session, and it was another Scots lad that played was a lad called Johnny McPhee. We were playing 1v1, and the ball, he was to be knocked up to Tony, and he was to try and keep a hold of the ball. And he just went down, and everybody thought that Johnny McPhee had kicked him, but he hadn't. And what had happened, he'd actually snapped his Achilles. And he was out for about 9 months, I think, something like that, which was quite a chunk out of him. But he got back again, and I can remember he was then becoming a superstar in our eyes. Anyhow, he was always the hub of the club, and he played very well in a lot of games. And then Newcastle came in for him, and I could remember that was the time when I'd started playing pretty well as well. And Bob Stokoe says that Newcastle wanted to buy both of us. He says, but there's no way that the two of you will go on the first together. Like, we just couldn't afford to let you both go. I think I'd played against Newcastle, and the goal I scored against Arsenal, I did exactly the same thing at Newcastle. I went through about 4 or 5 of them. The only difference was the keeper saved it, and John Craven knocked the ball in the net, and we won. And John Craven was bonkers. He says, after all that, I've scored the winning goal at Newcastle, and he never got a mention. It was all about me dribbling through. And he was a bit peeved at that. But no, and Bob Stokoe got us in. He says, there's only one of yous will go. And he says, well, he got me in, and he says, it'll be Tony that will go first. Because I think at that time they'd just bought Malcolm McDonald as well. So for over 100,000. So the money would have been just too much to buy me as well. And Bob Stokoe says the reason that Tony will go before you, he says, because he's got more of an end product to his game. He says skill-wise and everything very similar, but he's just got a better cross at the end or a shot at goal. And he says it'll be at least a year before. And it was exactly a year until I left. But Tony was, when he come back, he was just unbelievable. And the sad thing about his injury was certain clubs at certain times, I think, have different ideas about injuries. And he damaged his knee in a game. And their idea was to put everything in plaster straight away, immobilise it, let it rest and everything. But it was actually swelling in the plaster. And what it was, they were actually draining the fluid out of it through the plaster. And what was it? He'd done his cartilage.
All right.
And if it had been at Blackpool, they'd have just sent him in, got his cartilage out, and that would have been it. But his knee was never again the same, you know. And it was so sad. He played for Scotland. I could remember watching him on the telly. That he was man of the match against England. Oh, absolutely top notch.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that, Tommy. That's great. So, Jim, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, that's tragic about Tony Green, but he did play a few times against Coventry in the 70s, and he always seemed to have a good game.
Yeah, I think he played in the cup. You played them in the cup. I didn't play it because I was hoping at that time that we would beat them, because Gordon Milne had tapped me to go to Coventry. He says that Coventry wanted me. Yeah. And of course I'm thinking, oh, if Coventry get beat, then they'll buy me. They'll get somebody else in. Yeah. And as it happened, that's how it went. It was through Gordon Milne that I actually went to Cov.
Well, yeah, I think looking at your career, you obviously came down from Scotland, and you into the Blackpool first team. You helped them win promotion. Okay, it was a bit of a a bit of a disaster in the first division, but I think you turned a lot of managers' heads with your performances. And I think it was surprising that it took so long for you to actually step up again to the first division.
I think the problem there was probably my finishing touches, probably the crossing, the picking players out at the right time, maybe dribbling too much with it. I don't know, but obviously somebody saw something in me, or I wouldn't have been there.
Well, Gordon, I guess.
Yeah, Gordon. Well, and that was one of the reasons, because Bob Stocko knew he was going up north. He says he was going up north, and I thought he was going to take over from Joe Harvey at Newcastle, but it wasn't. It was Sunderland he was going to. He says, "I'll come in for you." He says, "If you hang on." And I says, obviously, with the bigger thing, if I had been anybody else at Coventry, I'd have probably thought twice. But because it was Gordon, and Gordon was brilliant with the young lads, you know, I knew I was going to somebody that he wouldn't sell me a dummy. You know, he was a genuine person. And I says to Bob Soko, I says, Bob, I says, I could break my leg next week, and then I says, it's the first division, and I'm not going to. And he says, I don't blame you. He says, and he wished me all the best. He was there. But he was the other one that says, no, don't forget, you need an end product when you're playing. And that did stick in my mind for the rest of my career.
Yes. And obviously, Gordon, I was interested in there's something you mentioned in the book about when you joined Coventry, when Gordon was trying to contact you. You didn't have a home phone.
No,
is that right?
It was a phone box. It wasn't far from Brian London's house at the back of Stanley Park, and I had to go down the side street, and I was in the phone box trying to get my money in the call box and press the buttons.
Yeah. And so what was it like, you know, coming to Coventry after Blackpool?
Well, again, as I said, the good thing about it was I came at the same time as Colin Steen.
Yeah.
And very similar to going in digs with Tony Green and Henry Mowbray, we all sort of grew up together, or we learned the trade, or the first steps of a trade. And the good thing about us was that I've always said it to young kids and everything, and they'll tell me what makes a good player and they also all skill, and you've got to score goals, you've got to do that, and they all leave out the word attitude. They all miss the attitude, and that was the one thing that Tony and Hen we all had, and it's something that maybe Stan Mortensen, who wasn't coach-wise, but he was a genuine man, football mad, and he would say to us, he'd call you in the office and we're thinking, oh, what have we done wrong now? And he'd say, you three, get yourself back home after the game today. He seemed to know when you needed a break, when you were getting a bit homesick, or whether he saw it in training or whatever it was, I don't know. But that stayed with us. And it was, as I said, when I came to Gordon, you knew that the training would be right, everything would be spot on, and you trained as you played.
Yes.
I've forgotten you were coached by the great Stan Mortensen. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
He was.
That's aging you a bit, Tommy.
I was lucky in the sense. Well, I wasn't lucky because I got him at a time where you probably needed being away from home. I was 19, something like that. Is that you needed a father type figure rather than a heavy coach.
Yeah.
And then getting through with him after a couple of years, I got Bob Stocko. Well, I had Les Shannon at first, and he actually got us promotion. Then we got Bob Stocko, and then we won the Anglo-Italian. But Bob was exactly what Gordon Milne used to tell us about how they train and what they do at Liverpool. You know, everything had to be well. You had to watch what you were eating. Training had to be right. You had to come smart to training. You had to come smart to games. And I never ever lost that. And again, where I was lucky in the sense that I come to Tommy Casey. He was assistant to Gordon when I first come to Coventry, and you had to win everything, whether it was a five-a-side or whatever it was, and that sort of got inbred in you, you know, that you had to be a winner, but you had to do it in the right manner. You know, it wasn't a case of just we'll just go through the motions in training and then we'll play well on a Saturday. That was never the case. Never with me.
Tommy, was the five-a-sides at Coventry Scotland v England? Because you had a heavy Scottish contingent, didn't you, at Coventry at the time? So you have some really good players as well.
Yeah, there was. And again, it was quite, when Scotland were playing in, whether it was marbles or dominoes, it didn't matter. There was always Scotland and England was the banter. And I nearly got a slap from John Craven at one stage. I don't know what it was, and we mentioned that it was Scotland. We must have got a draw or something at that stage. And I'd come straight into the canteen and says, "Well, you know, that's it. That's us as world champions." Oh, and I thought he was going to smash a chair over my head, but no, with good banter. Good lads at Coventry. We had a good set of lads.
Well, you've mentioned a former Blackpool and Coventry player who not many people talk about these days, but John Craven was, you know, he was a big name at Coventry.
He was a big name at Blackpool.
Yes. Yeah.
He was a big name. And again, we got John only because, well, they used to call him Mazza. Mazza was his name because he got the nickname of Mazza from Mazzapost.
Okay.
That was the type of player he was, and it stuck with him. Because that's why Gordon would know him. That's why Gordon would pick him up. He picked up, I think he come from Crystal Palace, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. And no, he was a winner. And he could play in so many positions. You know, he played at the back, he played up front, he would go up front and scored a few goals up front.
Yeah, and he wasn't afraid to put his foot in, was he?
Oh, no. Oh, well, we played, when we got into the first division, I could remember we played Man United at Bloomfield Road, and him and Paddy Crern got sent off. And it was like I don't know if you remember the Franny Lee and Hunter. They were punching themselves going up the tunnel. They were knocking lights at each other going up the tunnel. Oh no, he could look after himself. And he was handy for me because he'd look after me.
Yeah. So Tommy, you came to Coventry and you hit the ground running. You know, the side had a poor start, and I think, you know, Gordon and Joe Mercer knew what the problems were in the squad. They wanted to strengthen it. They had to sell Jeff Blockley to fund the purchase of yourself and Colin. And, you know, Colin arrived about a week before you, and you hit the ground running. We went through this amazing unbeaten run, playing some fantastic football. And you just took to it like a duck to water. You just fitted in from day one.
I think, not blowing my own trumpet, but good players need good players. You know, I think that was the problem with Tony Green at Blackpool. He needed better players around him, which he got at Newcastle, and unfortunately got that bad injury. And again, when I came, I thought, you know, they've sold Jeff Blockley. And it's funny, when I come to some of the games, and Jeff Blockley used to say, "I made you two." He says, "Because if they hadn't sold me, they wouldn't have bought you. They would have had no money." But I just thought at that time, when they were struggling a bit, I thought they're not going to buy forwards. They'll buy defenders. But fair play to Gordon and Joe. They went out and bought Steenie and me, and again we just hit it off. You know, we stayed in the same the Owsley Hotel, and it was brilliant. We got I think we lost one game in 14, something like that.
Yeah, the great run, and of course, you know, the English, the first division fullbacks, they just didn't know what to do with you, did they?
No, well, they used to say that. Well, what you do? He says, "I can't tell you because I don't know what I'm going to do." So there's no good asking me, why do you do that or why do you do this? And that's why when I'm watching football now, well, when I do watch it, it just pains me that fullbacks, they're now wingers, or wing backs as they call them.
Yeah.
There was no wing backs when we played. And I could remember when I first went to Blackpool, Jimmy Armfield, who was the first overlapping fullback at that time. He says, I could remember, he says, when I got in the team, Hutch, he says, I got in the team and I gave the ball to Stanley Matthews and I got bombed past him because he'd only get in the team. And Stan had given the ball to somebody else and said, turns around and says, Jimmy, that's my side of the pitch. Your side's the other side of the pitch. I'll look after this side, you look after that side. And that's why when it does my head when I see fullback, especially when I played with Willie Clark, who was absolutely brilliant for me, because he could sort in the right side of the park and he could find me. I knew to stay wide on the left. And I think most fullbacks, if you're staying wide on the left, yeah, they can give you a bit of space because they think, I'll close that down in time. That's no problem. Yeah. But he could find me. And once he found me, I was always brought up with, if you get one-to-one with the fullback, go past him. You've got to get to the byline. If you get to the byline, somebody's got to come out the middle. So that leaves a striker in the middle that's not marked. And that was a winger's job, to get past and get crosses in. Yeah. And the longer I played, especially when I played with Chris Catlin and then with Bobby Mark, was to bring up this. And I used to say, it doesn't matter who gets the cross in, but between us, we've got to get as many crosses as we can for somebody like Steenie, Little Alan Green, and then Davy Cross, and it worked well for us.
Tommy, but the thing was, you used to beat your defender, you used to go past him, and then you used to wait for him. This is how the fans used to see it. And then you used to wait for him again and go past him again. And then you do it 2 or 3 times, put him on his backside. Did you realise that the fans were getting frustrated and think, Tommy, just put the ball in the box?
Not as frustrated as the 2 strikers making runs to the near post and the far post and the near post again. They realised, I'm not going to that near post. He's not going to cross it. But the biggest problem, the biggest reason at that time, which I've improved later on, is that I was right-footed. Right. So if I went past the fullback, I wasn't really that confident crossing the ball to the far post or getting one with pace on it. So he would catch me up. Then I would come back on my right foot. Then I can cross it with my right foot more accurately than I could with my left foot. The only time I'd cross it well with my left foot is if I'd overrun it and it was going out of play. I was able to get a bit of pace on it and get it in the middle. But no, and again, I think it was the first, somebody quoted it, the first 9 fullbacks that I played against for Coventry all got booked.
Yeah, I think Jim mentioned that on the podcast before, didn't you, Jim?
And I used to say, and when you went down, you'd get up. But the good thing about it is that they knew I'd be back. It wasn't a case of, well, in the other days it was, give this winger a whack. Let's see what he's up to today. See if he likes it. And especially if he's playing away from home, he won't fancy it. But that was the one, that was Shankly's one favourite. Let's see what he's like playing away from home. And but they always knew that if I had it, I'd be coming back again.
Well, in those days, of course, bookings were far rarer. You had to do something pretty bad to get booked.
They'd get away with 3.
Yeah.
They'd get away with 3, then they'd get told off.
Yeah, and the game at Ellen Road, just after you arrived, I think Paul Reaney who was an England fullback, he got booked quite early on. Yeah. And then they had to get Norman Hunter on you, and he got booked.
I think it was one of my first games. I played against Keith Newton.
Yeah.
And I absolutely tore up my bits. And I'm saying that Mick Mills, he was another one that he couldn't handle me at any time. And you used to love playing against him. And they must have thought, oh, here he comes again. Because because they knew that, and they could kick me, it didn't matter to me. And the strange thing was I never had a wash-in pads.
No.
Well,
So
you famously, was it against Birmingham or Burnley where you got
yeah,
kicked on the shins and
Burnley.
you came back on
Yeah.
with 6 stitches in your leg and you still didn't have a shin pad on, which is amazing, really. I mean,
that was against Burnley, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
at
he's looking
Ipswich.
at the thing was that a lot of people think, well, he's got up again. But the thing was that if they studied it, in fact, there's a couple of pages in the book where me getting tackled for somebody for Chelsea. When they kick me, I'm in the air.
Yeah.
So it's different from when you're standing and they kick you from behind. And me being a left winger, but playing on the right, being right-footed, I was never with my back to the fullback. I was always side on because I was always going to take the ball with my right foot. So they very rarely kicked through me. And it was normally what I would do is just tease them to have a tackle, then toe it past them with my long legs. And then they would catch me, but I'd be in the air. You know, I very rarely got bad hurt. Got hurt badly because, well, I didn't miss many training sessions, never mind games.
There's a good story in the book about you and Tommy Smith as well, Tommy.
Yeah, yeah. And you mind you, Tommy was probably getting on about that time. And it was at Anfield, the old places for me to open my mouth. And he cut a ball and he knocked it past me. And I thought he was passing it to somebody, but he was going to run up knock it up the line and come inside and run round me. And I just looked and I thought, there's nobody there. So I run and picked the ball up and rolled it back to somebody. And I says to him, Tommy, you weren't thinking of racing me, were you? I says, he says, don't worry about it. He says, there's plenty of time to go. I says, I'll tell you what, I'll race you for your wages. He says, fair enough. He says, then I'll fight you double quits. I says, no, you're all right.
So that season that you arrived, you know, the good form continued after Christmas, and we had a great cup run, and all the fans were thinking, this is the year we get to Wembley, and we were confident. Went to Molineux to play Wolves, and the fans were confident. I think the players were confident. So what happened? Do you remember what happened?
I don't know. They had who was it? Steve Kindon, the left winger. He was an absolute flying machine, and he tore us to bits that day.
Yeah,
because Dugan was playing and Richards. Yeah, and in the warm up, Dugan actually knocked one of his own players out in the shooting in at before the game. He hit him on the head with the ball and he knocked him out. He knocked him out. And he went down and thought, oh, this is good. Yeah, I think we never performed at all in that one.
I think it was Steve Kindon who got knocked out, in the warm-up.
Was it?
Yeah.
Was it? So you obviously, you got into the Scotland side soon afterwards, and you're a big name. I remember I think you were the only Coventry player ever to get picked for the Rothmans team of the season.
Yeah, I got player of the year for Rothmans.
Yeah, and you were a big name, but there were rumours that big clubs were after you. Were you ever aware of any clubs wanting to sign you?
Yeah. Arsenal had come in. I spoke to a reporter from the Daily Mirror, and I queried Jimmy Hill about it, and nobody. And by all accounts, he says, well, he's only a luxury player anyhow. So I don't think Jimmy had fancied me from the start, but that's where it was. But then again, there was no freedom of contract or anything. You were stuck with whoever. I could remember I played in the World Cup in '74, and when I come back, I was on, I think it was £90 a week, wow. Which was
criminal.
Which was unbelievable at that. And you've gone back to '74.
So what would your Scotland teammates have been on then? People like
they'd be on 110 probably coming for Scotland.
Right.
No,
Right.
but the wages weren't astronomical. And again, you knew that the clubs, when you went into, it wasn't a case of having an agent and somebody that knows what he's talking about and saying, well, if you sell him, he'll get more money there or whatever. You just go in and you realise that the club's only got so much money. And Gordon Milne used to tell you, he was quite straight with that. He says, I've only got a budget of so much to do. He says, do you want all of it? I says, yeah, it's up to them. Let the rest of them fight for theirs. But he was all right. He didn't do me too bad.
So what about Norwich? I thought Norwich were keen on you.
Yeah, I went and spoke to Norwich, and I went to see John Bond, and went in, and he again. I was a bit disappointed, really, in Gordon or Ron Wiley that they never, because I'd been at Coventry all my life. I'd come from Blackpool to Coventry, and they never really gave me any idea what to ask for, or look, don't be silly now, don't ask for silly money, or tell them you want, didn't ask me to ask what I wanted. Is it, what's the setup like here? Where would you want me to play? Nothing like that. It was just a case of go down and fend for yourself. And I can remember, I think I asked for £12,000 signing on fee or something. But it wasn't until later on that it come back to me that he's not the type of player we want at our club anyhow. And Gordon had said to me that I'd asked for too much money. I says, well, it's open to negotiations, I'll take less. And he says, no, he's not the type. But what I didn't know is Bondy had already spoke to Ted McDougall. And I'd played for Scotland with Ted McDougall at Wembley. And I roomed with him. And I could remember I was always with Kenny and John Blackley and Danny McGrain. That's the ones I used to knock out with Scotland. And we're having a chat, and then I went up to my bed. So I'm up to my bed, and Ted's in his bed, and I put the telly on. How long's that television going to be on? I says, okay, and I put it off. So I got a magazine out to read the magazine. How long's the magazine? Are you going to put that light out? No, I thought. And it was him that had said to Bondy that I wasn't the type of lad which I found out later on from John Bond and John Benson. They told me that he'd already spoke to Ted McDougall.
Right.
But in the end, it worked out well for me with John Bond.
It did,
Tommy,
didn't it? Yeah.
Tommy, have you got a light you can put on? Because I'm losing you in the dark. That's better.
Oh, that's better. Oh,
There
you
you
see
go.
now.
I realise you're Scottish, but surely you can afford the bill.
Yeah, but we've not got our heating allowance this month yet.
All right.
So talking about the Scotland days in the book, you do talk about Billy Bremner a fair bit.
Yeah, he wasn't my favourite really, and I was never one to upset anybody or pick fights with anybody. But it was just the first meeting when I first went to Glasgow at the railway station, the station hotel. Everybody met up there, so I went there, and usually I went collar and tie again through Bob Stocco on how to dress and when you're going to meet people. And so I went in, and Billy sat with who was it? Sandy Jardine, Dennis Law, and there was some little lad Ford. So I go in, and they've got jeans and t-shirts on and that, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is a national sport, like. So anyhow, I goes in, and Billy's first, who do you play for? I says, and we played them on the Saturday. We'd played Leeds on the Saturday.
Yeah.
And he says, all right. And straight away, Dennis Law says, big man. And he called the woman, the tea lady over, a cup of tea for the big man. He says, go and sit down. And that was the difference between the two of them. And I thought, why would he say something like that? You know,
Yeah.
to try and. But I found that was a sort of a Leeds thing at that time. Although I'm saying the Leeds thing, maybe the older players, you know, Gordon McQueen and Big Joe and that, they were brilliant. They were good lads.
What
Yeah.
was it like? Obviously, you played against Leeds a few times, and they're always known as dirty Leeds. What was it actually
I
like
don't know
playing
about
against
Dirty
Leeds?
Leeds, but I could remember them telling me to mark Madeley at a corner kick, and I'm looking at him, and if ever I felt like I was playing against my dad as a kid, I'm looking at him as if he's about 6'4", and of course, and I'm marking my corners who like I couldn't have had a bus queue. And the ball come over and he headed it into the net, and I thought, oh, that's it. So I was off corners after that. But no, getting on with Terry Orath as well.
Yes.
Terry wasn't keen because they seemed to be, as players, they were restricted by Don Revie. It was like once they get a goal up, that's it. Keep the ball, and I mean, it probably worked nowadays, but he just felt that there could have been better teams, more flair in them, and they could have been than they were. And again, I think Terry was brought up in the hard school with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and Terry, I think it's quite interesting. The side you joined in '72, you know, with the Willie Carrs and the Dennis Mortimers, and Gordon sort of dismantled that team almost. You were the sort of the last man standing, and then he built the team around with Barry Powell and Terry Yorath, Bobby McDonald, Jim Holt, and of course we had Ian Wallace and Mick Ferguson.
Gary Gillespie.
Yeah,
which
and you know,
they did some good buys, and fairness, in the spell that I was there, I think maybe about 10 of the youth team actually played in the first division.
Yeah,
they had a great setup, and I mean, I was never favourites with Jimmy Hill, but what he did at that club was unbelievable. He was 10 years, 12 years, 15 years ahead of everybody else. The training ground was far superior than anything. And I'm talking about Man City. Even when I went to Man City, I thought, I'm coming back to Alloa again. With no training facility or anything. And I'm thinking, what they've got here, the stadium was the new stadium over the far side. Changing rooms, dressing rooms were immaculate. And you just thought, they're on about an academy. And I don't know if you remember, they used to have a big house at the corner of the ground. They had a big...
yes, a hostel.
Yeah. All the young lads were there.
Yeah.
All the young apprentices and everything stayed in there. And we were always told that in the school holidays, you'd get the young kids, the schoolboys coming down on trial from Scotland, from Wales, Ireland, wherever. And we'd go in the canteen where Joyce and that was. And that was a good thing about them as well. The first team and everybody all sat at the same place. Although the younger players, they moved a bit down to the far end rather than the top end where the first team were. But we were always told, if it was me or Jim Holton or that, you go down, there's two Scots lads, go down and have a chat with them when they're having their dinner. And the same with Terry would talk to the Welsh lads, and Jimmy Holmes would go and talk to the Irish. And it was so well set up that, as I said, he was years ahead of everybody else. And again, all those young players end up playing in the first team.
They did.
Martin Dobson was the coach of them at the time. No, Martin Dobson.
Colin Dobson.
Colin Dobson. Yeah.
So Tommy, that team, the second team that Gordon built, if you like, you know, we're playing with two wingers, two strikers, and it was exhilarating football. You know, they didn't always win, but they played some great football.
First game of one of the seasons was against Middlesbrough, and we were on Highfield Road on the Friday, wouldn't it be the Friday, because we'd go up on the Friday. Midweek, we had a training session on the ground, and they set out the pattern of play that we were going to play, and he wanted us to play with 3 in the middle and 3 up front, and we said no. We said no, we'd rather play with 2 wingers and play with 4 up, and we actually did play with 4 up and 2 in the middle, which made it hard for, although we had Barry Powell and Terry in the middle, who they had good engines, you know, and Les Cartwright was in, John Beck was the other one that played on the right, and I played on the left, but we were always taught that if it breaks down, one of yous, the 2 wingers don't get caught up the field at the same time, 1 up, 1 back, and although it looked like 4-3-3, we actually played with 4, and we went up to Middlesbrough, and I can remember the first thing, probably the only time I've seen a manager, and Gordon turned around and says, "If that's how you want to play, fair enough." And he gave us our head, and it worked.
Wow.
You know?
For a lot of people, well, I was about 11, 12 years old then. It was pretty much, I remember it as the best time to watch us play football. It was so exciting with the 4-2-4.
It was the best thing. And I've said this before, and I don't know if I said it in the book. What people didn't understand was that I was really enjoying myself. Yeah. You know, I enjoyed playing. You look forward to playing. There was no way I was ever going to be injured or miss training or anything like that. Yeah. It was so good. And the report I tended to give on the far side, where the disabled cars used to sit in there, if I went to take a throw in or something, they'd be chatting to me on the way down. "Come on then, Tommy, we need to get one. Let's see if we can get one today." You know, and it was really, really good to play in.
Yeah. It was it was probably the most exciting season, I think. You know, we were, especially at home, we barely lost a home game, and you know, we were unlucky to not get into Europe, because
that was,
you know, I think I'm going to upset my Arsenal friend Terry now, because they let us down by not beating Ipswich in the cup final. Otherwise we'd have been in Europe, wouldn't we?
That was it.
Yeah, and Ipswich are like 6th from bottom, weren't they? 7th from bottom. They had an awful season that season, and Arsenal were favourites to win it, and were
they were. And we were well pleased. We thought, "Oh, that's it. We'll get into Europe and we'll get that other place," but it didn't work out.
The one game in that.
Sorry,
go on.
Sorry, I was asking you, Jim. Tommy, of course, you can see I'm wearing the chocolate kit here.
Yeah.
And I have to ask you, did you see it before we actually wore it, or was it just dropped on the team?
No, I never saw it. I was told about it. We were told about it because I used to go for a pint down to the Counting Club, the working men's club. I used to go down there, and on a Sunday with my next door neighbour, and we'd go down for a pint and play a game of dominoes or something. And we'd go in there, and I says, we'll have a little bet for what do you think the new kit will be for next year. Now I'll give you 3 guesses, and you've got to get both the colours, right? You've got to get both the colours. Nobody, not one even got near it. I thought I could have made myself a bit of money there. But
so the one game that brown kit is remembered is that game at West Brom when we lost 7-1.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
That was in it. Big Jim pulled his calf in the warm-up, didn't he?
He did. Yeah.
Jim Holton pulled his calf in the warm-up, and I think Terry went to play at the back.
Yeah.
And they were flying. They were.
They had Cyril.
Cyril
and Cunningham.
Yeah. Was Barnsley playing at that time as well?
I don't think so. I think he was Ali Brown and Tony Brown, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Cantello.
Yeah. But now the one thing that I've always wondered, after that game, Gordon dropped Terry.
Yeah.
And he didn't really get back in the side till later in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Did he blame Terry for that defeat, or do you know?
I don't know. They had a bit of a barney, but I just couldn't work out. I mean, Terry had to go and play at the back because he was defensively minded, and he could slot in there. But no, and it was funny. But Jim Holton was his roommate, and we were away somewhere, and Big Jim started singing the Cliff Richard song, "We Don't Talk Anymore." He says, Big Jim says to him, "Terry, you and Gordon could do a duet with that." and for the life of me, which Terry was well pleased, he ended up at Tottenham. And that was the things that I queried, or I couldn't work out, was letting Terry leave us and go to Tottenham, and Jimmy Holmes leave and go to Tottenham.
Yeah.
And I know why they let me go, because they wouldn't have got any money for me if they'd have left me, but because my contract was up and I'd be more than 5 years at the club.
Yeah.
But even for 47,000, it wasn't a big change, was it?
No, and do you? I know you were in America for, was it 2 summers at that stage, and you came back both times. You came back after the start of the season, didn't you?
Yeah, I came back, and I actually agreed a contract with Ali Hinton at Seattle. They wanted me to go back out there because I'd done really well out there, and it suited me because it was AstroTurf. The fullbacks, they couldn't slide tackle you. Right. You know, if they did, they were losing skin. And again, it suited me going out there. But when I came back, John Bond had come in for me.
Yeah.
So, Tommy, when you went to the States, though, it did mean you'd come back after the start of the season. So the season would already have started by the time you came back.
Yeah, the season had started.
So were the clubs happy with that, though, that arrangement?
He must have been. In fairness, I think maybe Ron Wiley helped me there, because I wanted to go to America, but I said to him, it must have been the year before, I'd like to go to America, but I says to Ron, because I spoke to Ron probably more than I spoke to Gordon, is that I'd like to go to America while I can still play. I don't want to go, which when I went out there, I found out so many good players had just gone out there for the money and just went through the motions, you know, and I think that spoiled it a bit when I first went over there, that there was a lot of players out there that were just on holiday. Yeah. But I was lucky. I went to Seattle, who had a great side when I went there. There were, you know, Ali Hinton. He had Alan Hutchison, Bruce Rear, Big Boy Davis up front for
Roger
Davis. Oh, we had a decent side, and it was done right. You know, Big Jim went somewhere. They were farming a few of the first team players out. Yeah. Jim went to Tulsa somewhere, but they would be, everything we did, we'd go the day before or 2 days before, or you'd go on a road trip for 10 days. Everything was spot on, where Jim says we were going, and you're on standby waiting to get on the plane, and where it was always well looked after. But when I came back, John Bond had come in for me.
And so that was a sad day when you and Bobby McDonald went to Man City, but I understand.
I would have bet all my money that I would have finished my career at Coventry.
So was that never an option then?
Pardon?
Was it never an option for you to stay?
No, he just says, do you want to go up and speak to him? I wasn't in the team. He wasn't in the team. And again, I was on a free transfer at the end of the year because I'd been more. And I says, but I've got a year of my contract to go. And when I went back, and Ali Hinton says, look, when you go back, don't cause any trouble or anything. Just go and play in the reserves or whatever. And just, keep your nose clean. And we'll look after you when you come out here. Right. Which I went into after 2 games, and I wasn't in the first team. And I went in to see him. I says, I'll go to the first division. I says, but I'm not playing in the reserve team. I says, I've not come here for that. I says, and then we played Norwich at home, and I was in the players' lounge after the game. I hadn't played, and Kevin Bond was come in for a drink with John Ryan. Funnily enough, who was out in Seattle as well. And I says, hey, your dad's just gone to Man City. He must be looking for a winger. And Bobby was on it. Should have never move off this chair, Bobby says. And he needs a fullback as well. And the two of us were called in on the Monday morning. And I had to look at him when Gordon says, do you want to go up and talk to Man City? And I'm thinking, I thought he was taking the mickey. I says, well, why would you not want to go and talk to Man City? Yeah. But again, they were down the bottom. They were a bit similar to when I first went to Cov. They were struggling at the bottom. I think they were sitting there third bottom when we went, and they were playing Tottenham the night I went to speak to them. And it was a laugh really when I went, because when I went, I says, I'll go up, and I explained to Bobby, I says, Bobby, I'm going to Seattle. I says, I've sorted myself. Oh, he says, don't upset the apple cart. So we went to speak to them, and I went in first. I says, but I'm telling you now, Bobby, I'm not signing. So I goes in, and Bondi comes, he says, yeah. He says, well, come on in. How much do you want? I says, no. You tried that before. I says, now, he says, these are different. These have got loads of money. He says, these have got tons. So I says, so he put down the figures, which were unbelievable. I says, I'll need to speak to the wife. Now, he knew Irene because he'd come out to Seattle because he knew there was a couple of the Norwich lads had been out there, John Ryan and them, and he was out on holiday out there. And he says, give her a ring. We'll go out the room, you give her a ring. And I'm panicking now because I told Ali Hinton that I wouldn't sign for anybody until I spoke to him. I wouldn't have let him down. So I went in, and I says, now, John Benson and I will go, and you could, and I says to him, Gaffer, I says, I need to tell you, I says, I told Ali Hinton that I wouldn't sign for anybody until I spoke to him. I says, and I think it's, but of course I couldn't speak to him because it was in the middle of the night in America. So I'm stuck twice. And then he says, well, I'll tell you what to do. You're not leaving here until you sign this contract. So I signed a blank contract, well, with all the figures and everything in it. He says, you go and speak to Ali Hinton, and if he doesn't, if it's off, we'll tear the contract up. He says, and that'll be it. He says, but if you're going to tear it, if you want it torn up, ask for John Benson. He says, because I won't want to speak to you. So when I went back there, I spoke to Ali Hinton, and he was brilliant. He says, Hutchie, he says, if they came for me now, he says, I would go. And I said, and that's where I got misinterpreted with the City fans, was that I says, well, and I said that my very words with Ali Hinton was that you play all your life to get, all your career to get with a big club. Everybody wants to play for the big clubs. And Man City's a big club, which was no disrespect to Coventry because I loved the place. I says, but, and I think the fans had taken that the wrong way. And he says, just go. And I went, and that was it. It was done.
Was it Steve Hunt keeping you out of the team then, Tommy, when you left?
No, they wanted me to play on the right wing.
Oh, right.
they wanted me to play in the wing because Stevie was predominantly left-footed, and don't get me wrong, a far better crosser of the ball than me. But he wouldn't get to the byline as often as me.
No.
You know, it was just, he was a different player for me. And again, he suited the way that Gordon and him wanted to play. And I just got better in the end with it.
Yeah.
You know, I just thought, after everything I've done, I mean, I'd never caused any bother at the club, never cost them any money. That was a certainty. And but Ron Wiley was very good, and eventually Ron says, "Take it, you've got to go." He says, "You'll make yourself a bit of money." He says, and that's it. And then again, he came in for me to go to Hong Kong. Ron,
Right.
He's the one that took me to Hong Kong after we'd just been beat by Coventry in the cup.
Oh yeah.
At Main Road.
Oh, you played that day, did you?
Yeah, I played that, and again, I played in the right wing for them, but I was playing right side midfield. It wasn't a case of playing as an out-and-out winger.
Yeah.
And I'd float. I could go where I wanted me to go.
That was the day. That was the day that Asa Hartford got sent off, wasn't it?
Did he? I can't remember. I had
Yeah.
food poison the day before.
Yeah.
When I come
Tell me
into
one
the game,
thing.
my face had blown up.
One thing I'd like to get your thoughts on before we close is the famous game against Bristol City in 1977, when we both had to get a result to stay up and send Sunderland down.
Yeah, and the thing was, I don't think I'd scored a goal that season, and I scored on the Saturday against Everton to draw 1 each.
Yeah,
we drew 1 each, and I could remember earlier on I'd gone for a diving header, and Steve Kenyon studded the top of my head, and I had a gash in my head. So after the game, we gets back, and the gaffer, Norman Pilgrim, says, "You need to go and see Tom Sargent." So I had to go up to Tom Sargent's house after the game, blood still running up my head, and he'd a party going on in his house. "Oh, come in, big, sit down." And he says, "Sit down, I'll get my bag." And he stitched it up, and he stitched the top of my head up. And he says, we've got to win on Tuesday. You don't get me working too much," he says. And it was probably the best 2 games I'd played for Cov. Well, the most pleasing ones for us to stay up that year.
So what about the ending of the game when it was 2 each and the scores flashed up on the board?
Yeah,
what happened next?
Yeah, it was 2, and I can remember we realised with quarter of an hour to go, if it's a draw, we're both up, we're both staying up. And Mick Ferguson, he'd only got in it, and he hadn't been long in the side there. And I can remember Norman Hunter saying, "Hey, that's it now, big man, we're finished, that's it. So we'll just play keep ball." So they keep ball, and Fergie's chasing about, trying to get the ball off them, wouldn't let them settle. And he says, "Hutchie, would you have a word with him? Does he understand what the score means?" And that was it. And it was a brilliant feeling after that game, because I think it was the week before, Gordon Milne took us to Wrighton, to the car factory, and I know for a fact they offered us money to stay up, and he says no, and we went round the factories, which is another good thing, PR thing that Jimmy Hill I think it was him that got us doing it, is go round the factory. And we all, of course, when you go in at first, because you've got brummies and everything in there, and they're, "Oh, you'll get hammered." And then by the time you get round, we've got to win Saturday now. And it was amazing that when you spoke to some of the management after the game, we had a dinner with them, he says, "You would not believe the difference in attendance on a Monday if you win on a Saturday."
Yeah.
He says, you don't realise what it is to win and what it means to these people. And I think you always met, and I remember saying it to people that when I, later on in my career, when I went to Swansea and that, these people, if you're not trying your soul out, they're going to know, because they're working all week, they're working in the pits, or working in the factories, and they're seeing you wandering about.
Yeah.
So you've got to give them something to start with. You don't have to play well, you just need to put in a performance. And if you do that, at least you can live with yourself, never mind pleasing anybody else.
Tommy, in 1980, I travelled up to Oldham to watch a cup match, which you played in. I think the coldest I've ever been at a football match.
It was a mud bath.
And you won 1-0 and you scored.
Yeah.
Are there any places you've been to where you think, this is dreadful, I just want to get home?
Yeah, but the thing was, I was desperate to do well, because I was on trial at Oldham when I was a kid, and they rejected me. And Ron Welly had obviously had them watched. He says, now, when we're playing they're quick on the break, but what they do, if any crosses come into the box, if the keeper gets it, the two fullbacks just sprint up the field and he throws it over your head, over everybody's head to him, and they're on. So whenever you've got to break back and get, and that's exactly what happened. The keeper got the ball and I read it and I dropped back and he threw it straight and I caught it on my chest. And I brought it down and I bent it in the far corner.
Right.
And we won 1-0. Well, we won it, and it was only a mud bath. I've never played in as much mud. And of course, you're chasing back and everything. Come in at half time. Bobby Mack, who didn't really like to get dirty, Bobby liked to. Bondi used to say to me, he says, you never hurt the ball. Everything's nicely played and everything. And we come in at half time and Gordon Milne says to Bobby Mack, because I'm sitting next to Bobby, he says, and he says, you keep letting him do all your running. He says, and we'll need to bury him at Christmas. And he goes on to somebody else. And Bobby says, they should have buried him last Christmas.
We won't talk about the next round. We lost to Blackburn away.
Yeah.
Well, Tommy, I have to say, well, thanks to you. I don't know if you remember, but I worked out this afternoon, it's 27 years ago that you came down from Scotland and helped me launch my first book.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
No.
It was it was a book. This was the book that you came down. You came down, and we had lunch. We had lunch together. You had your son with you, and I had my son, who was only about 10 years old at the time. And I've been eternally grateful for you for that. And then Kevin, it's about 3 or 4 years ago, Kevin Shannon approached me, and what a lovely man he is.
Oh, fabulous.
He's a lovely man. And, you know, he was worried. He rang me up and he was worried that I'd be upset that he wanted to write your story, because he said, you should be doing it. And I said, Kevin, you know, you do it. And he did a fantastic job.
Oh, he did very, very good.
It's probably the best football biography I've ever read. It really is.
Yeah. And again, the only reason it was to be written was because my grandkids never saw me play.
Yeah.
And again, because I joked to him, I says, because seemingly the editor wanted to know why I wanted to do a book. Because if he wants to do a book just to make money or anything, they weren't keen on that. And I explained to him why it was. And I says, because the kids keep saying, but Grandad, why do you always play in black and white?
Yeah.
Because they'd only seen the old films of me playing.
Yeah.
So it was.
That's a good point, because when you read the book,
he wanted to call the book Mr. Magic.
Right.
Because that's what the old chairman used to call me.
Right.
And I says, no, that's too cheesy. That's never.
Yeah.
And he says, well, how do you think? And the front page of the book, the cover of the book, I says, well, that's actually the end of the book, because what's in the book is how I got there to play for Scotland.
Yeah.
And to get there, you have to have hard work and you have to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why he called it hard work and belief.
Well,
And I thought that was
yeah, I think we should give it a plug, because it is a brilliant book. And you and Kevin should be really proud of yourselves. And I know it's gone really well, hasn't it? You've been down to Coventry 2 or 3 times.
I've been down 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And strangely, I went through to Alloa. They had me through there, and they sold the book and everything there. And I've been to Wraith Rovers. They had the book. I went down and spoke to a group of Alzheimer's and dementia old fans that have been. So I've done a couple of them up here as well. I went Dunfermline. I've been in there, and it's good to go and it's amazing. There was one lad that I went down to. He actually saw me playing for Alloa against East Fife.
Wow.
And I says, yeah, that was a game where I played, and a lad that I played at junior football with the Bluebell, Dundonald Bluebell, he worked at the shipyard in Methil here, and he says, Alloa was playing tonight, and he was a season ticket holder at East Fife. He says, yeah, he says, I'm going to the game. So he come into work the next day. He says, that lad you're on about, that Hutchie, he says, is he a big tall, skinny lad? He says, yeah. He says, what does he do? Oh, he says, he's a painter and decorator. He says, tell him to stick in, he says, because he's not going to be a footballer. So I kept a hold of all my brushes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. Sorry we had some problems at the start, but it's been well worth it.
I need to sack my technician.
Yeah.
It's certainly, Tommy, fantastic for coming on. Like I said in the introduction, in a Coventry City all-time starting 11, I would say 95% of people put you in there, basically. The other 5% probably wouldn't put you in there because they hadn't seen you play. But if they had, it would have been 100%. What do you think, Jim?
It was amazing when I went down to the walking football with Kevin. The turnout that he got when I went there to play with it. The book couldn't believe I was going to play either. Yeah. And I got a letter, an email the other day from Blackpool saying that they've got a friendly coming up to generate some funds or something, but I don't have to play all the game. If I only want to play half the game, of course the wife went mad. She says, "Do they know how old you are?" But no, my time at Cov was the best I've ever had. And I keep saying to them that to play for Scotland and play for Coventry was like winning the lottery without buying a ticket.
Yeah.
Because scouts wouldn't come and watch us, would they? It wasn't until we beat Liverpool that they come and watch me, and they'd actually come to watch Colin Steen.
Right.
And Colin Steen, and I scored the winning goal that night, and then I got picked the following month for the Czechoslovakia game.
Yeah.
So I've got to thank Steenie. Says he made me.
Well, okay. Go on, Jim. I'll let you do the closing statement.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much, Tommy, and it's great to see you looking so well. And hope to see you.
It's always a pleasure to talk to anybody from Cov because I always think they know what they're talking about.
I hope to see you at Legends Day.
Because I've got to listen to them about Rangers and Celtic up here all the time.
Yeah. So hope we see you at Legends Day next year.
Yeah. Well, I might be there. I don't know.
Okay. Right. For those watching or listening, if you could like and subscribe. If you want to contact Jim, it's at Clary Bolton at gmail.com. That's right, isn't it, Jim?
Yeah.
And of course, if you want to see some other past stars, we'll be more than happy to try and get them on the show and talk about their careers. So yet again, Tommy, thank you for coming on. Thank you for spending time with us. And Jim, as brilliant as always, we'll no doubt catch up again during the week. So play up Sky Blues and let's look forward to the start of the season. So ta-ra for now.
Always a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Sky Blue Fans TV, for the fans, by the fans.